बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम वसल्लल्लाहु अला नबीयिल करीम रब्बिश रह ली सदरी वयस्सिर ली अमरी वहलुल उक़्दतम मिन लिसानी यफ़क़हू क़ौली। The title for the present talk is Islam and Blasphemy. Islam and Blasphemy. Generally, blasphemy is called as Shatm Rasool or Ihanat Rasool. So it is a general notion, it is a widespread notion that blasphemy or Shatm Rasool is haram in Islam. The death of a shatim or one who is engaged in blasphemy is no less than death or capital punishment. But according to my study, it is completely wrong. It has nothing to do with Islamic teachings. I know that the majority of fuqaha or Muslim scholars of later period are of this opinion. They say that a shatim must be killed, yuqtalu haddan. It means that one who is engaged in blasphemy, he must be given capital punishment. But capital punishment is a very serious matter. Simply qiyas or ijtihad is not enough to form this kind of opinion. You have to provide a nas, that is textual reference. You know, the text of Islam is preserved in its original form, that is Quran and Sunnah. So you have to provide a clear reference from the Quran or Hadith. But there is no such reference. By clear reference, I mean that there must be a sentence in these words that man shatama rasulakum faqtuluhu. Man shatama rasulakum faqtuluhu. One who is engaged in blasphemy to your prophet, you must kill him. You have to kill him. But this kind of sentence you cannot find neither in the Quran nor in Hadith. So it is completely based on qiyas or ijtihad. And I would like to say that qiyas and ijtihad are not enough. When comes the capital punishment, you have to find a nas, a textual reference, a clear verdict in the Quran or Hadith. But this kind of ayat or Hadith is not available. So I think that it is completely wrong to say that blasphemy is a crime and liable to capital punishment. Simply, the opinion of fuqaha or Islamic scholars is not enough. This kind of ijtihad, there are two kind of issues, basics and non-basics. In Islam, there are two kind of issues, basics and non-basics. So, in basics, you have to provide some text, some reference from the text. Because ijtihad is workable only in non-basics. Only in non-basics. But this kind of thing is not a matter of non-basics. It directly relates to the basics. So who are these fuqaha? Who are these Islamic scholars? All these fuqaha are product of Abbasid period. Abbasid period. Fiqh was compiled in Abbasid period. And all these fuqaha were born in Abbasid period. That is in later period of Islam. In Islam, only 3 period is authentic. According to a hadith, Khairul Qurun Qarni Sumbal Ladina Yalunahum Sumbal Ladina Yalunahum. It is a hadith. Khairul Qurun Qarni Sumbal Ladina Yalunahum Sumbal Ladina Yalunahum. So there are only 3 periods that are authentic in Islam. First is prophetic period. Second is period of the Sahaba, that is companions. Then period of the Tabi'in, that is companions of the companion. So according to hadith, only these 3 periods are authentic periods. After these three periods, there is no other authentic period in Islam. So all these fuqaha were not born in these 3 periods. They were born after these 3 periods, during the Abbasid Empire. So, I think I can say that when this opinion is not found during the first 3 period, and it is found only in the Abbasid period, this difference gives us a clue to understand why these people formed this opinion. It was due to the empirical situation, empire. You know, Islam began in 610 AD in Mecca. At that time there was no empire. But in the later period, there was expansion in Islam, and at the time of Abbasid Caliphate, Muslims were able to establish an empire, like empire. So in the later period, we see that there was a great empire. For example, Abbasid Empire, then Mughal Empire, and Ottoman Empire, and Spanish Empire. So during this period when Muslims were living in an empire, all these kinds of opinions evolved. For example, these fuqaha are also, there are so many other opinions of fuqaha that was formed in this period. For example, these fuqaha are Islamic scholars, divided the political geography of the earth in three parts: Darul Islam, Darul Harb, and Darul Kufr. There was consensus among fuqaha that where there are Muslims in a ruling position, there is Darul Islam, and where there are kafir people in a ruling position, that is Darul Kufr, and where Muslims are potentially at war, that is Darul Harb. So they categorize the geography in these three parts, but this was wrong. Why you have right to categorize humanity in these three parts when there is no such categorization in Quran and Hadith? You cannot find a single verse in the Quran that categorizes humanity in these three words. Then you cannot find a single hadith that categorizes humanity in these three parts. So it is completely wrong, baseless. No one has the right to categorize humanity in three parts when there is no such categorization in Hadith or Quran. So it is an example that how these fuqaha formed such opinions that was not found in the Quran or in Hadith. So is the case of Shatm Rasul or blasphemy. There was no Quranic verse, there was no Hadith in this regard. But they, by their own qiyas, by their own ijtihad, formed this opinion and said that one who is involved in blasphemy, he will be killed. I think it was completely wrong. Completely wrong. I think this opinion itself is a derogatory remark against to the Prophet of Islam. This kind of opinion, this kind of law itself is a derogatory law. Why? Because Prophet of Islam was a da'i. And who is da'i? Da'i is one who is a nasih towards humanity. Nasih means well-wisher. Every prophet was nasih. That is, every prophet was well-wishers to all humanity, to all mankind. The greatest concern of the Prophet was to inculcate truth in every human being. لَعَلَّكَ بَاخِعٌ نَفْسَكَ أَلَّا يَكُونُوا مُؤْمِنِينَ. So this was the great concern of the Prophet of Islam. Prophet of Islam was nasih, well-wisher to all mankind. His mission was not to kill others. His mission was to embrace all humanity in the fold of truth, in the fold of divine truth. لَعَلَّكَ بَاخِعٌ نَفْسَكَ أَلَّا يَكُونُوا مُؤْمِنِينَ. There are many verses in the Quran that tell us that Prophet of Islam was completely well-wisher to humanity. So how he can say that anyone who remarks in a derogatory manner against myself, to kill him? This is not a saying of such prophet. It is a saying of a king and not a prophet. Saying of this like is a saying of a king and not a prophet. Only an emperor can say like this, and not the Prophet of Islam, who was rahmatul lil alamin. وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. This is a Quranic verse. According to this Quranic verse, Prophet of Islam was mercy to all mankind, blessing to all mankind. So this kind of saying you can attribute this kind of saying only to a king, not to a prophet. Then there are many references in the Quran and Hadith that proves that it is completely wrong. For example, during the Prophet of Islam, in Medina, there were some Jewish tribes. So what happened? One day there was a dispute. There arose a dispute between a Jew and a Muslim in Medina. There were heat exchanges between the two. So that Jew of Medina said, "Inna Allah astafa Musa alal alamin." Musa, there is Moses. Musa was the superior prophet. Musa was superior to all mankind, including all the prophets. This was the saying of the Jew. Inna Allah astafa Musa alal alamin. God Almighty gave superiority to Musa over all mankind. So Musa was a superior prophet, superior human being. So a Muslim became angry and he beat that Jew. Muslim said that you are completely wrong. Inna Allah astafa Muhammadan alal alamin. Muhammad was the superior prophet. Muhammad was a superior to all mankind. So when this case was referred to the Prophet became angry. The narrator says that غضب غضبا شديدا. Prophet became angry. He said nothing to that Jew. According to the report, this event is reported in Bukhari and Muslim. The Bukhari and Muslim are most authentic book in Islam. So this event is reported in Bukhari and Muslim. So Prophet never said any word to that Jew. He addressed only to the Muslim. It is very important to know. Although that Jew said that Musa was the superior prophet, it was a kind of derogatory remark. It was a kind of derogatory remark to the Prophet of Islam. According to this remark, Muhammad was inferior and Musa was superior. So clearly it was a derogatory remark. But Prophet said nothing to that Jew. He only addressed to the Muslim. He said that don't talk like this because no one knows. He said that don't make any prophet superior to other prophets. La tafaddalu bayna al-anbiya. Don't make one prophet superior to other prophets. All prophets are equal. Then Prophet of Islam said that, at the time of doomsday, all humanity will be gathered in the Maidan Hashr, all men and women. Then I will be the first who will arise and proceed to the throne of God. But when I will reach to that place, I will find that Musa is present over there before myself. When I will approach to the throne of God, I will find that Musa has reached before myself. He is over there. So this hadith is a clear example that if anyone passes a remark that is derogatory, we have no right to kill him. No. Instead, we have to advise Muslims not to react negatively. This hadith is very clear. Prophet of Islam never said anything to that Jew. He only advised Muslim not to indulge in such discussions and not to react negatively. So this is a clear hadith. So I can say that the present notion that Shatm Rasul is a cognizable offense that is liable to death is completely based on qiyas, is not based on Quran and Hadith. Then there is one more important point. You know, Islam is a dawa movement. Islam requires dawa. Islam is a religion of dawa. Islam is a religion of dawa. Prophet of Islam and also his prophets, followers. Prophet of Islam and also all his followers are da'i. It is their duty. It is their duty to spread the message of Islam to all mankind. It is most important duty of all the followers, all the Muslims, to convey the message of Islam to all mankind. So this kind of mission requires normalcy. This kind of mission requires normal relationship between da'i and madu, between Muslims and non-Muslims. So Muslim cannot afford such kind of behavior. Because if you kill a writer, if you kill a writer simply because he has published a book in which, according to your feeling, there are some derogatory remarks, so if you kill that writer, it is bound to produce hate and enmity. And it happened. When Muslim scholars issued fatwa against Rushdie, when, Rushdie published a book with the title Satanic Verses. This happened in some other writers like Taslima Nasreen. So when these writers published a book and Muslims felt that there are some abusive remarks to the Prophet of Islam or blasphemy, and then Muslim scholars issued fatwa, kill that writer. He is liable to capital punishment. Then what happened? All these writers are alive. Salman Rushdie is alive. Taslima Nasreen is alive. But what happened? People became against Islam throughout the world. Because we are living in the age of media. At present, we are living in the age of media. When these scholars issued such fatwa, it was instantly reported in media, in print media and electronic media. So all the people so media, through media, all the people came to know that this kind of fatwa was issued by Muslim scholars. And due to this fatwa, people used to believe that Islam is against the freedom of opinion. In Islam, there is no right of expression. Even one man has no right to live. In our present age, there are two very important things. First, that modern man believes that freedom is summum bonum. Modern man throughout the world believe that freedom is a summum bonum, then there is media. Everything instantly is reported in media. So when the Muslim scholars issued such fatwa of killing, that was against the present notion that freedom is summum bonum. Everyone has right to speech. Everyone has right to speak, right to write. Everything has right to express his opinions. So these fatwas were against this modern belief. It is a religion of mankind. It is the religion of modern man. Modern man believes modern man believes in freedom as an article of faith. So this fatwa was not only against those writers, this fatwa was against the present religion, against the present thought. So it was very, very serious. So everywhere people became furious, became negative. And you know what happened? Although those writers were not killed, but dawah opportunities were killed. These peoples failed to kill those writers, but they killed the dawah opportunity. It is very important. These scholars failed to kill those writers, but at the same time, they killed all those dawah opportunities, because dawah requires normalcy. Dawah requires normal relationship between da'i and madhu, between Muslims and non-Muslims. And this normalcy was completely shattered. So these fatwa, all these fatwa. So this fatwa was not against some writers. It was against Islam, against dawah. So it is very important to reassess the whole matter. For the sake of argument, I would like to say that if it is a commandment in Islam that one who commits blasphemy, he will be killed, even then you have to stop this commandment. Why? Because this kind of fatwa are bound to produce, bound to become, this kind of fatwa is bound to become counterproductive. So you have to see the result. It is also an Islamic teaching that if the result is negative, you have to abandon that kind of act. Min husn Islam al-mar'i tarkuhu ma la ya'nihi. So you have to keep yourself from all those things which are going to be counterproductive. So I'm saying that first of all, this kind of fatwa is completely un-Islamic. This kind of fatwa is completely un-Islamic. This kind of fatwa has no basis in Islam, in Quran and Hadith. It is completely based on qiyas. And even then, if someone believes sincerely that it is Islamic fatwa, again he must refrain himself from issuing such fatwa. Because it is certain, with certainty I can say that this kind of fatwa is counterproductive. This kind of fatwa is going to prove a counterproductive fatwa. So anyone who is sincere, he must refrain himself from all these kind of negative practices. Then I would like to say that if you read the Quran and Hadith, you will find that in the early period of Islam, there were some peoples like these peoples. In the early period of Islam, I mean in Mecca and Medina, there were some men and women who were engaged such kind of derogatory activities. Then what happened? Prophet of Islam and Sahaba and Quran gave the answer in a positive manner. That is, they reacted in a positive manner. They refuted these kind of sayings on a rational basis and logical basis. They provide logic, they provide reason, and not sword. So according to the example of the early period of Islam, this kind of act must be taken as a challenge, not as a crime. There is difference between challenge and crime. There is difference between challenge and crime. Crime is liable to punish. But when there is challenge, you have to meet that challenge on a rational basis. It is very important to know the difference between challenge and crime. So if one is engaged in blasphemous activities, if anyone issues a derogatory remark to the Prophet of Islam, it is not challenge. No, it is not a crime, but it is a challenge. So Shatm Rasul is a challenge and not a crime. So crime is a matter of judiciary. When there is a crime, there is a punishment. But when it is challenge, you have to meet that challenge on rational basis, on logical basis. So if one publishes a book against Islam or against the Prophet of Islam, you have to take it as a challenge. as an intellectual challenge. And you have to prepare another book. I am saying that there is a difference between challenge and crime. I am saying that if someone publishes a book that is derogatory to the Islamic religion or to the Prophet of Islam, you have to take it as a challenge and not as a crime. A criminal is liable to punishment. But when there is a challenge, you have to meet that challenge on intellectual level. For example, if someone publishes a book of this kind, you have to read it. And then you have to compile another book. You have to write another book. You have to publish another book in which you must refute all those arguments on intellectual level, on rational level, on logical level. So this is the correct Islamic way. This is the correct Islamic way. Anyone who claims to be a Muslim must follow this suit. According to my knowledge, according to my experience, according to my study, it is completely wrong to take a challenge as a crime. You know what happened in the early period of Islam? When Prophet of Islam was in Medina, at that time he was head of the Medina state. You know, at that time Medina was a city-state. Then whole the Arabia was Islamized. And Prophet Islam became the head of the Arabian state. So although Prophet of Islam was head of that state, but he never issued such order. For example, some non-Muslims who were poets, they gave some derogatory comment to the Prophet of Islam or blasphemous comment to the Prophet of Islam. Then what happened? Prophet of Islam never said that you have to kill these people, these poets. Not at all. Prophet of Islam said to Hassan ibn Sabit was a Sahabi, a companion. He himself was a shair. So Prophet of Islam said to Hassan ibn Sabit that you must meet this challenge. So Prophet of Islam composed some poem. In this poem, he gave the answers to those non-Muslim poets. This was the way adopted by the Prophet of Islam. Prophet of Islam took those poems that was composed against the Prophet of Islam. Those poems were completely derogatory to the Prophet of Islam. But Prophet of Islam never took it as a crime. He took it as a challenge. And he said to Hassan bin Sabit, to meet this challenge on intellectual level. There is a clear example, clear proof that shows us what is the way of Islam in such situation. So the crux of the matter is that you have to differentiate between the two. You have to differentiate between crime and challenge. If there are crime, I mean specified crime. If there are specified crime, then you have to take it as a crime. But when there is challenge, you have to take it as a challenge. And the response to a challenge is not punishment. It must be dealt on intellectual level, on rational level, and logical level. So these people have failed to know this difference. These people who are issuing fatwa, they fail to understand this difference between the two. In the early period of Islam, there are ample examples that a person was against the Islamic religion and the Prophet of Islam. He was engaged in derogatory activities, in blasphemous activities. But when he was addressed in this manner, when some companions of the Prophet met him and gave him the message of Islam, and he read the Quran, his mind was completely changed. He embraced Islam. He became a soldier of Islam. One who was against the Islam, now he became a soldier of Islam. There are so many examples of this kind, including the well-known Muslim personality, that is Umar Farooq. Umar Farooq was against Islam, against the Prophet of Islam. He was engaged in derogatory remarks against Islam, against the Prophet of Islam. But when he read the Quran, when he studied the Quran, his sister Fatima gave him some part of the Quran. So when he studied these Quranic verses, he was completely changed. He accepted Islam and became a great soldier of Islam. So this is the right way of coping these problems. I think that a very important point is that in Islam there is a complete model. Prophet of Islam is a model. He's a model. Quran is a book of ideology, and then Prophet of Islam is a practical model. So in everything, in every affair, in every matter, we must read the Quran, and then we must see the model of the Prophet of Islam. So Quran gives us the ideology of Islam, and Prophet of Islam gives us the model of Islam, practical model. It is very important. You cannot say by your own qiyas, your guess, by your own mind. You have no right to say anything by your own mind in Islam. If you want to say anything, you have to see the Quran, you have to see the Hadith, you have to see the Sunnah of the Prophet of Islam. You have to see the model of the Prophet of Islam. You have no right to say anything by your own mind. So there is no such commandment in the Quran. And also there is no such example in the seerah of the Prophet of Islam. Once the Prophet of Islam was in Mecca, someone said directly before him that you are a condemned person. We condemn you. Mudammaman nabayna, wa deenahu qalayna, wa amrahu asayna. This person said to the Prophet of Islam face to face that you are a condemned person. We condemn you. You are mudammam. He said that you are not a Muhammad but mudammam. Muhammad means praiseworthy. Muhammad means praiseworthy. And mudammam means condemned person. So he said that you are not a Muhammad, you are a mudammam. It was completely a derogatory remark. It was a blasphemous remark. But what happened? Prophet simply smiled. Prophet simply smiled and said nothing to that poet, because he knows that these kind of words are not going to be history. It is simply some words. And word cannot produce any kind of negative result. It is simply a lip service. So Prophet of Islam smiled. Smile means he avoided, simply. Prophet of Islam ignored. When Prophet of Islam at that time smiled, it means that he ignored. The best reaction towards all these things is principle of we have to ignore. At the time of cartoon controversy, some papers in Denmark published a cartoon that was derogatory in the lives of Muslims, and there was a hue and cry. At that time, I published an article with this title, "Ignore Cartoons." Ignore cartoons. This was based on the Prophet's Sunnah. When Prophet heard, one Prophet listened some derogatory remarks, some abusive remarks, some blasphemous remarks, he simply smiled. That means he ignored. So this is the Prophet, this is the Sunnah of the Prophet of Islam. You have to ignore all Taslim and Nasreen. You have to ignore all cartoons. You have to ignore all Salman Rushdis. This is the Prophet This is the Sunnah of the Prophet of Islam. So the title of my article was Ignore Cartoons. This was not simply a title. This was a reflection of the Sunnah of the Prophet of Islam. You know why Prophet of Islam smiled? Although it was a great blasphemy. When someone says that you are not Muhammad, you are not praiseworthy, but you are Muzammam, we condemn you. So it was a derogatory remark, but he smiled. It means that he ignored. So I would like to say that that according to the teaching of Islam, we must ignore all these things, all the negative things. We must respond positively. You know, positivity is a great teaching of Islam. We have to react positively even in negative situations. This is the Islamic teachings. We have to respond positively even in negative situations. So what is positive response? It is to ignore. So you have to ignore all these things. You have to avoid all these things. You have to try to forget all these things. You have to engage yourself completely in dawah work. The most important work is dawah work. We have to spend all our time, all our resources in dawah work. We cannot afford this kind of fatwas. We cannot afford, because it kills the dawah opportunity. It kills the Islamic spirit. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم أجمعين.